Good afternoon, dear friends. Today we would like to discuss the open archives. Recently, we commemorated 1 year after the passage of the law about opening archives of the communist and totalitarian regimes. And today, we would like to discuss how much this law influenced the lives of ordinary citizens and this the main Ukrainian the center of the independence efforts research center, and today I would like to invite Mr. Andriy Kogut, head of the State Archive of the Security Service of Ukraine. He will describe the situation with the access to the archives and how much the number of applications to the archive had grown. The year had passed after the passage of this law, and I would like to mention what was the specificity, the novelties of this law. The special law, which regulated the access to archives of special services. This law just mirrored the situation in the neighboring countries and in Poland, in Czech Republic, in Hungary, in the former socialist countries. Actually, it was not a unique law. This was a replica of those laws, and before passing it, we studied carefully the experience from those countries and tried to decide which experience of those countries. Thus, we studied the experience of Poland, Czech Republic, Germany, etc. So that experience proved us that they separated the group of documents from special services which were closely related to the violation of human rights, and stated that the access to those groups of documents should not be restricted, that access should be free of charge, and that the documents related to violation of human rights and the documents about those who were involved in these violations, that is the documents about former agents of those special services, they could not be classified. The second thing, the second statement was that the old Soviet stamps characterizing the documents as classified and restricted approach are not the ones which are used in today's Ukraine. They are in Russian language. That's why it's easier to separate those documents from the general core of documentation. And clearly shows that this information, disclosure of this information could not be dangerous. After a year of the passage, after the passage of this law, we decided to understand to understand what was the impact of this law, we analyzed the intelligence service archive, the security service archive, the central archive of the civil society association. That is, we address to all those archives which are subject to the scope of this law. So we disseminated requests about information from those archives and asked to indicate how many applications from ordinary citizens they received back in 2014, 2015, 2016, and try to observe what is the general trend, and we observed that there is a trend in growing of the number of applications to those archives. And when we look at the State Security Service archive, you can easily see that this curve goes up. This is Central Archive in Vinnytsia, in Volyn. The same is true about Zhytomyr Oblast. There are some archives where number of applications is not big, like in Mykolaiv Oblast. Actually, in Mykolaiv, they have rather flat curve. But when we decided to make the curve split by quarters, which allows us to see the dynamics more clearly. State Central SBU archive, then Vinnytsia, Volyn, Rivne Oblast, Sumy Oblast, and Ternopil Oblast. When we look at the total number of applications, then we see that in 2015, the number of applications had grown considerably, 43%. On the one hand, this was a positive result of the passage of this law. On the other hand, this is a general sign and general result of the fact that archives became more opened. And more people felt interested in the history of their families. Out of those archives where we disseminated our questionnaires, we may say that in half of those archives, this trend is the trend on growth of applications is very obvious, very clear. As for the second half of this total number, we obviously understand that we should strengthen institutional capacity in those archives. When we look at those archives which received a bigger number of applications, there's Lvivska, Kyivska, Poltavska, Zhytomyrska, and Chernivtska Oblast. When we look at the Lviv Oblast, we clearly observe that the number of applications is much higher than in all other regions. As for the topics which draw the biggest attention of applicants, we looked at the Central Archive in Kyiv, the biggest number, social and legal requests, then confirmation of the civil situation, genealogical ones, and some others. For Zakarpattia, we have information about civil status confirmation and genealogy, the family history research is negligible. The share of family history research is negligible, lesser than 1%, and other topics by 16%. So the researchers dealing with the family histories are rather negligible. When we speak about security service archive, we see that 1/3 of the applications are from staff researchers, and only several percent of applications about family history comes from ordinary citizens. Also, the electronic archive, which is a joint project of several sectoral archives, we clearly observe the dynamics of applications. When we look at the unique visitors, we state that 61% growth in primary visitors was reached. So the growth is clearly seen. And when we compare the first quarter of 2015 against first quarter of 2014, we clearly observe 3 times growth in applications. That is what we wanted to strengthen attention of people to their past, to increase numbers of application to the archives. And now the question is whether archives are able to cope with the growing number of applications to the archives. So this suggests that institutional capacity should be strengthened, and they should receive more funding to be able to cope with growing number of visitors and to develop their potential. The second issue is digitizing the documents and allowing access to documents via internet or in special centers, digital centers, would allow to maintain this high interest to the past. As for the activities of the archives themselves, during the last year, archives had strengthened their presence in digital format and in internet.
I remind that Igor Kulyk, and he will introduce himself. And I remind that we have simultaneous translation into English. And this topic is considered a priority. That's why we ask the speakers to speak slowly. I'm Igor Kulyk, and I represent the Institute of National Memory, and I'm the head of the department. And my goal is to create an archive at the Institute of National Memory, and this should unite the archives of law enforcement institutions and to provide answers to requests of the citizens, because this responsibility should be lifted from the law enforcement bodies, because they have other responsibilities connected with fighting crime. So the main idea is that the requests are on the rise, and comparing with the practice of our neighbors, the archives in Poland, there were only 14,000 requests, and we are speaking about hundreds or several thousands, but not hundreds and thousands. So from the other side, we should understand whether the archives will be able to provide the growing, to answer growing demand, and whether they have personnel and other resources. And we should work, and we should show the importance of archives and convince the power and the public that the archives, this is a national history matter and the matter of national security. And also archives should represent their activity, represent unique documents and those funds and materials that they have, and it will depend, and it will be important to show their importance, and it will attract the attention of the public, and also it will also attract the attention of the governmental bodies. In my presentation, I would like to outline the advance of representation of archives and social media. I'm speaking about Facebook at the moment. And I would like to tell you that in February 2012, there was an all Ukrainian survey, and those people who addressed to archives, and there were several questions about archives, whether they used the archives. 88% of people said they didn't use the archives. It means that the majority didn't address to archives and do not plan to do this. And maybe if they need to confirm their property rights or their pension or that they worked somewhere, so if they would be motivated to do this in some way. Openness of Ukrainian archives, 37% says that they do not know because they didn't work there and they don't know whether they are closed or open. 27% of people say it's difficult to say whether they are open or closed, and here we have about 60%, two-thirds of people, they cannot tell this, and others, they say that they are closed. So 80% of people say that they either don't know or they are convinced that these archives are closed. So this is the statistics for 2012, and also the types of information the public want to get in archives. 45% of people say that they do not plan to use archives, they don't need it, they don't see what can be of interest, and they cannot understand how they can be linked to these archives. And 20% of people say that they are interested in the past of their family, and things connected with their families. So according to this research, we may look at the situation and at the positive trends. Firstly, the archives presented them in social media. They created groups, some pages, some profiles, and they try to communicate and to overcome some barriers and to provide information about themselves. Firstly, this is the information on the activity of the archives in order to show that this is not only storage of documents, but also this is activity. And here in my presentation, there are two directions. First, group, and the second is official pages of the archives, and I will start in chronological order. First group that was created, this is access to archives, and this is one of the most active groups that was created in 2013 in June and in July, and the majority focuses on the activities of repression, institutions of repression. The second group and the rest of the groups, they were created in a year, starting from the last year, from April last year. And there is an open group that is called the Study of Foreign Archives. This is an active group, according to its posts, but the number of the participants is 280. The next group that was created in March 2015, and this is an open group of electronic archive, and this is for Ukrainian scientists, and they want to create electronic databases of different archives to create an images of the document and then present it in the internet. So this is sharing the information on the materials that are stored in the archives. The next group, we can call it newly born, because only 10 days passed, and this group is, it's difficult to say about the dynamics of this group. It is called Archive Reform, and they deal with the issues of reforms. Maybe it is not clearly stated in the goal as it is stated on their Facebook page, but those who created this group and who are participants of the group, they want to change archives. They want to change not only legislation and specialized legislation on the activity of the repressive bodies, and they want to broaden their activity because there are materials from 15th or 16th century, and they are very important and interesting, and we should understand how to work with these documents, how to digitalize them, how to present them, how to create these documents. And this group tries to find ways how to prepare new documents and legislation. And we have the situation, and if we conducted such a round table, maybe there would be more such groups. So these are general groups that do not unify the archives. They unify and gather those citizens who are interested in archives, those specialists and experts who work in the sphere of archives. And open archives in Oblast. There is a State Archive of the Ternopilsky Oblast, State Archive of Lviv Oblast, and Vinnytska Oblast. They are created in the framework of this law of May and October and November of 2015, State Archive of Donetsk and Lviv Archive. So this is November 2015 and March 2016. So they have about 10, so even 100 members. So I wanted to show this in order to popularize the archives, that everyone who want to be involved, who could get involved, and to propose to archives new ideas and to show them what they can do. We are speaking about official pages of Central Archive institutions. Here we can see Central State Historic Archive of Ukraine. This is one of the first institutions. It appeared in January 2011, and they had 1,000 likes. And also Central Archive on foreign studies of Ukraine, materials from diaspora, from those researchers who work abroad, and Central State Electronic Archive of Ukraine. It's not really active because they don't have proper funds and they do not carry out the policy of popularization of digitalization of this document. Also, Central State Archive at the Museum of Literature and Arts of Ukraine, they started an interesting project. It is an important case, and also two central archives that contain a lot of documents on repressive bodies, and this is Central Archive on civil associations and the archive on the higher educational institutions. Also, Dnipropetrovsk Oblast Archive, Luganska, Kirovogradska, Ternopilska, Vinnytska, and Donetsk Oblasts. So I will present this information on the site, so you can look it up on the site and you can join and popularize to spread the ideas and to get involved in the groups. And at the end, two things. The first one, official pages of archivists. There are only association of the specialists of archives. They want to popularize the activity and help the scientists, and they work. They are active. They have their direction of work. And the last one is what I have said, the electronic project, the most important case. And this is the project to popularize arts of the 20th century through the electronic media. And they try to present materials. This is a systemic project. They provide materials weekly connected with some personalities or events. They also provide some comments to these documents, and they show personalities and some private letters or some signatures that were not known, or some letters or documents connected with other personalities. And also you can see many things. And last picture is Lorian Pagmagilny. So this was the photo provided several days ago by this project. So this is all for now, and you have contacts here. You can see it on the slide. So please join us. And I would like to tell you that the internet is not only Facebook, and archives are not only on Facebook. There are some prepared decisions and projects that were created and are realized, and they were created and realized, and the purposes of these projects, and what should we do in order to promote it. I would like to give the floor to my colleague who will tell you about the idea that this is in development.
Доброго дня.
Thank you. Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Today we will speak about digitization of the documents. Partially, these documents are already digitized and they are posted in internet. One of the provisions of the law about access to archives provides that there is a category of documents which compulsorily should be digitized. And when we speak about beginning of the years 20,000, it looked as a miraculous idea, but today we have it in reality. Those of you who had a chance to visit our archives in old times faced such a thing as a prohibition to copy the documents, and quite often when I asked the question why this was needed, the archive employees said that if we copy everything, people won't come to us anymore. So the electronic archives in early beginning of this millennium looked like a mad idea, but from the 2008 archives started to be digitized, but were not present in internet. Here I make emphasis on the repressive bodies archives. When Mr. Yatrovich was director of the Security Service Archive, he opened a network of centers in the ESBU branches around Ukraine, where it was possible to apply for documents which were digitized and which were of primarily interest for researchers, like about Crimean Tatars, about the Great Famine in Ukraine topic, about collectivizations, etc. So that became possible in those special centers, and those documents were digitized. The similar practice in Europe was well known in the earlier periods, and in Ukraine we were very jealous of looking at the digitized archive about people's movements in Poland, where it was easy to get access to documents about the situation in Western Ukraine between two wars in the 20th century. Also, the Baltic countries were pioneers in doing this. In early beginning of this millennium, they started to post in internet on special website the ESBU archives for the representatives of the Russian Federal Security Service. It was a shock that very classified documents which appeared in internet, they are very heavily classified in Russia. Of course, this may sound as a nonsense, but the KGB documents website is blocked for the researchers in Russian Federation. Speaking about contemporary situation, my colleague Andriy Kogut mentioned about website of Ukrainian liberation movement. This is a good collection of the archive documents from the SBU archive. We have been dealing with the filling of this website. And if you allow me, I would like to describe very briefly this website. It is very positive that any willing person, either Ukrainian citizen, a person without citizenship, or even a foreigner, should not go to Kiev to review these documents. The majority of them are digitized and they are posted on website. You may enter the website and download the documents to your computer. The major topics covered by this website, these are collections of documents about commemorative dates and some practical documents for the researchers. For example, Ukrainian liberation movement researchers like Ukrainian nationalists, Ukrainian Uprising Army, they know the famous folder number 372. This is a collection of documents which was expropriated by the security service from Ukrainian nationalists. There are around 90 different volumes of books which are already posted at the website. The last year, jointly with the Center of the Liberation Movements, we are the SBU archive. We prepared a collection of letters of correspondence of Mr. Shuhavich, of General Shuhavich, with his son Yuri Shuhavich, who is now member of parliament. And Yuri Shuhavich several times appealed to the military commissioner to confirm that in the years of the Second World War, he, as a boy, he stayed in the army and actually served in the Red Army, providing assistance at the front line. And we revealed that we revealed that it was a story invented by Yuri Shuhavich as a young boy to defend himself from young criminals in his region when he remained without father after the Second World War. Also, we have introduced all the new inventions in digitizing the documents. For example, Czech Republic, which is very innovative in this, they managed to post more than 300,000 documents, and we will take this as a good model. And this year, we are preparing an exhibition devoted to Mikhail Grushevsky, and I would like to give the floor to Madam Oksana, who's a researcher and a scholar studying Mikhail Grushevsky creative work.
Yeah.
Thank you. I work at the Institute of History of Ukraine. I'm Oksana Yurkova, and I would like to tell you about the project we started 2 years ago, and it is called Electronic Archives of Mikhail Khrushchev. This year, we're going to commemorate 150 years of his birth, and this will be in September. And for this reason, last year the president order was issued, and to complete this order, there was a special provision by the Cabinet of Ministers as to the commemoration of anniversary of Mikhail Khrushchev. They decided to create a special Khrushchev archive. And we would like to tell you that, unfortunately, Khrushchev is underestimated, because from one side we want to create an icon of him, and as a historian, as a scientist, I'm against this. And at the same time, Khrushchev is understated because he is very topical now. And now I would like to cite from the work of Khrushchev, 1909. Mistake, once again mistake, but when for 20 years the policy remains the same, it shows that this is not only the problem of politicians, but the problem of the whole society, the whole nation. So for historians, his works are very interesting. His historiography is very interesting, and he established the directions. And Ukrainian history science was repressed, and now we return to those tasks that were set 100 years ago by Mikhail Khrushchev. The creation of electronic archive of Mikhail Khrushchev. This idea followed the goals to popularize Ukrainian history and culture, and we established a very ambitious goal to collect all the works of Khrushchev and all the works about him, to systemize these works. And it is important that all these works should be collected in different variants, starting from handwriting manuscripts and also written materials, printed materials, and e-documents. And the project e-archive of Mikhail Khrushchev, we decided not only to collect digitalized copies, but also to collect his handwritten documents and to create a powerful research instrument. The problem is not to digitalize this and put on the side, but also to explain to lay people how to use it and to provide specialists with the opportunity to carry out the studies easily and to help to study the heritage of Mikhail Khrushchev. So what we have now in Khrushchev studies. So these are hundreds of works about Khrushchev, the works of Khrushchev and his letters. There was works in the 1990s, and they reprinted the history of Ukraine, Rus, and also other works of Khrushchev. And now in institute named after Khrushchev, they carry out work to prepare the works of Khrushchev in 50 volumes. 20 volumes were already printed in 22 books. And also his letters were published. They published letters of Khrushchev. Then they started letters with his counterparts, and this is a very good source for studying not only the activity of Khrushchev, but also the whole period when he worked, and also the Ukrainian movement. So from 1997, 6 volumes were published, and also Canadian specialists, they carry out special work. They translate the works into English, and they published 6 volumes and 8 books. And this is very important project for the English-speaking audience. And of course, we have a lot of documents and many books and magazines. Despite many publications at the moment, there are many problems. There's no full bibliography of Mikhail Khrushchev. We know that he wrote more than 2,000 works, articles, and other papers, but we did not find everything, and it is when they prepared 50 volumes of Khrushchev, they found new documents and new works of Khrushchev that were not published before. And there is no chronology of full-fledged chronology of his activity, and the works of Khrushchev, they were studied and republished, but they are not accessible to the general public because these editions are rare and because there are small volumes and small editions of his works. Also, there are some historiographic problems and failures. The scientists and researchers, they publish studies, the same topics, and they express the same statements and provide the same citations and publish the same documents, and sometimes for several times. And I know several instances when, for example, the letters were published 3 times, and second and third person who published these documents, they provided the preface that this is done for the first time. So they didn't know even about the first publication. And also the problems of some indices and explanatory materials. So we would like to show to you that there is a project to publish Khrushchev in 50 volumes, and they publish it simultaneously, but the only problem is that there can be the same documents, and this creates some difficulty for researchers. Also, the publication of letters, it depends on the editor of this publication. You can see from the left that this was not good study and correction, and this on the right you see a better version of the document, and here there is an opportunity to create an electronic site of Mikhail Khrushchev, but it is not updated, and the colleague that works with it, he introduces the materials that were published in the 15 volumes of Khrushchev, and the task are the representation of Ukraine and Ukrainians in the world, and popularize the scientific knowledge in Mikhail Khrushchev and the history of Ukraine on the whole. And there are some specific tasks of the research, and the main are representation of his bibliography of Khrushchev, archive materials, and also I wanted to pay attention to draw your attention to the structure of the archive, of electronic archive, that envisages library, archive, sources, gallery of. There can be pictures, portraits connected with Khrushchev, also a timeline and biographic and genealogical data and memorial map. And the most important thing and the most important and difficult task we face is not digitalizing of the documents. This is the most simple part. The most difficult work is the work to create software, not to just put materials about Grushevsky on the side, but to have the opportunity to use these materials effectively in the full scope in bibliographic order. So the page, how it looks, if you want to look at the publications of the articles of Grushevsky. So this is the edition, translation, and several re-editions. So there are materials, you have the opportunity to see the publications and also where these materials are, and also some photos and portraits and pictures of Grushevsky. And also we got involved several scientific institutions in this project. This is a long-term project, and we plan that scientists will cooperate in the framework of this project. These will be historians, archive specialists, bibliographists, and IT specialists. Thank you. And I invite everyone to cooperation. This was Oksana Yurkova, and now we spoke about the past, but then I give the floor to Igor, who is going to tell us about the prospects of maybe about some important laws in the sphere. Thank you, Elena. This law is unique for Ukrainian legislation because for the first time we started to get to conservative sphere with new principles, with those principles that they have in Europe for more than 10 years, and the recommendations of European Union of 2013. There is an important principle. Access to archives should be based on the principle of access to official documents. Speaking in Ukrainian legislation term, we should implement the norms that are envisaged by the law on the access to public information. And it means that in our archive legislation, the principles should be changed on how the citizen can realize his constitutional rights. And we have Article 34 of the Constitution of Ukraine that provides the right to collect the information, and Article 54 of the Constitution that also speaks about scientific and creative activities, and the Article 32 that is on the privacy. So this is the first step to change the system and to review the idea that archives, they are not just storage facilities. This is a heritage, the source of information, both for scientists and citizens, and I support my colleagues in that archives, they should change themselves. They should speak about themselves as entities, not only like about places where a person can take a document and then just leave. So their role should be highlighted, and in this time when we speak about decentralization, when we speak about review of our past and the reassessment of our past. And the bright principle and example is the date that will be in 6 days. This is the Chernobyl catastrophe disaster commemoration, and the work can be started in this direction and started the public discussion and the construction and existence and the catastrophe. This was the crime of communist regime, and thousands of lives were lost, and the territory was destroyed, and these documents that are in the archive of SBU and the law that provides us with opportunity to get the access to these documents, because we understand that there are many documents in the Russian Federation to which we cannot get access to. And we see the trend that Russia closed the access to the documents, and these documents are important for our society to reassess the events, because they're not only sources for rubles and 20 kopecks, but also that the human rights were violated during Soviet times. And this trend that was started and the realization of this law, and colleagues told that about the digitalization of the materials, this is one of the most important steps, but we should create an archive that is envisaged by law, and also we should transfer the principles that were realized in the law, that the scientist is responsible, and archive specialist, he is responsible only in the framework of his duties to preserve materials and to carry out his duties. He shouldn't be responsible for the distribution of that information. This is the responsibility of the person who gets the information. And it's very important and for the archives, and they have already started to do this, but the society do not assess the archive information properly, and they underestimate it, and there are many different materials on the 18th century and also in modern history of Ukraine. And also this is an important step in the context of archive of repressive system and on the whole. And what is going on, and my colleague told you about it, the cooperation with different institutions, with our German Polish counterparts. This is important not only for us but also for our neighbors, because it is difficult for them to find documents, and also they can understand why in the global context, why the Ukraine as such, because we have totalitarian past, and it helps us to establish the links, and as my colleague said,
that's why I appreciate very much what my colleagues had done in development of the archive legislation. I believe that in the nearest future we should develop the white paper on the new legislation, on the new archive development. We should have the new law on archives. Currently, we have a conflict between the special laws on archives and with the basic law on archives. So the principles which were the base for current law, which we mentioned today, and into the general law archives should be harmonized. Also, we should understand that archives and should develop based on new principles, because the reading rooms in archives should not be just enlarged, but we should look at the strengthening institutional capacity of archives, and about digitizing the documents, about making more documents available in digitized format, and thus enlarging the access to archives. That's why we should not just thinking about creation of the archive of the Institute of National Memory physically to collect, to bring together all the archives on specific topics from SBU, etc. And we should not just bring these documents physically together, but we should also digitize them. It was Igor Rozkladai, media lawyer, who pointed out our attention to the laws which provide us with the access to archives. Are there any questions in the room? Since there are no further questions, we would like to thank you. Our round table was organized by the Center of the Research of Liberation Movement and Renaissance Foundation as a project on the archives development. We are very grateful to the Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. Thank you.